Welcome to The Change, a podcast about the changes in life that shake, break, and make us. I'm Laura, a 45-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum who has until recently always loved change.
And I'm Cathy, a 53-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum, and change is actually my kryptonite. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia on which this podcast is recorded and recognise the continuing connections to lands, waters and communities.
We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past and present. Hey Cathy, how are you?
I'm really good. Recovering from a sore throat, but, so it's a bit gravelly and stuff, but apart from that, really good.
Gravelly.
Yeah, my sexy voice. So tell us, who have we got on today?
Today we have Kerryn Mayne. She's a Melbourne-based author, former wedding photographer and current police officer. When she's not working, attempting to solve crime, she's writing about it or preparing an endless stream of snacks for her 4 kids.
4.
She's 4. She's incredibly busy. Lenny Marks Gets Away with Murder was her debut novel, released in February 2023. Lenny Marks was shortlisted for a Ned Kelly Debut Crime Award, an Indie Booksellers Award, an International Thriller Writers 2024 Best New Novel Award, and an ABIA Award for the Matt Richel Award for New Writer of the Year. Basically, she's been nominated for a lot, but she hasn't won any awards, as she's written. Lenny Marks Gets Away with Murder will be released in the USA with St. Martin's Press July this year. And Joy Moody is Out of Time is her second novel and was released with Penguin Random House Australia on 27th of February 2024, which also, incidentally, is my son's birthday. A huge change welcome to Kerryn.
Hey, Kerryn, how you going?
Good, thanks. Thank you for having me on.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. So we'll just jump straight into the questions. I was hooked when I read the first line of a weekend paper article. I recall my reaction to being told we were pregnant with identical twins all too well. It was something along the lines of, "This is great for committing crime." The sonographer, rightly so, looked at me as if he was doing an ultrasound on Tony Soprano. I'm going to say, for me, when I was told I was having identical twins, that was not my first reaction. I've got 2 heartbeats, I cried, and I couldn't process how I would be able to do it all. And I only had 1 older child, and I was working part-time as a teacher at the time. But now I've read your bio, and I feel decidedly lazy. You are a police officer, a mum to 4, including twins, and you've written 2 books. How do you fit it all in?
Look, I've overcommitted a little. I think it's fair to say.
No.
And some of it planned and some of it not planned. I think it's like anything, isn't it? Like if you said to me, say, so my eldest child is 6. So say 7 years ago you went, in the next 7 years, you're going to have 4 kids, and blah, 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 blah. I would have gone, no, thanks, actually. What I might do is book a trip to Italy and not get married. And, I knew I wanted kids and I'd met my partner and stuff, but it would have just been like, that's a lot to deal with. But it's like anything, you just get there like bit by bit. And what other option do you have, in the end? And when I try and break it down, and I do quite often think, okay, what can we peel back here to make life like any smoother, calmer? Like, are we doing unnecessary things that we don't have to do? Because obviously it's, you've got the kids, but then also there's all of a sudden, hey, Wednesdays, my daughter wants to do drama after school, and I don't want to say no to that. But I kind of want to say no to that.
Yeah, totally.
So it's there's a lot going on, but also I really didn't expect to throw into that mix in that period of time that I would get offered a contract with Penguin to write 3 books in the end. It was a 1-book deal for Lenny Marks Gets Away with Murder, which was my first, and I got that book deal pregnant with twins, and then I didn't tell my editor I was pregnant with twins because I thought, what if she thinks I can't do it? She doesn't know me. Like maybe she'll just go, oh, that's a bit risky. So I told her after I'd submitted my final edits, and because everything was like this, because it was all Zoom, and I'm like, oh, by the way,
He just stood up.
August, I'm busy. So,
My God.
but it all kind of just rolled along and panned out, and yeah, like my husband is incredible, and some of it is like, I picked a good partner, like that's a
Yeah.
good start, but also they are his children too, and it is his household too. So there's also just that expectation that, well, we've got to just, it's teamwork. We've got to pull the load together. We did have that conversation on, I can't remember what morning it was this week, and I said, good teamwork this week because we've had gastro in the house.
Oh,
I know, and every parent, like it just hits different once
yeah.
So, and school holidays. So we just had like one twin didn't get it. And I don't know why. Is she invincible? Is she just like, does she lick enough things?
She's just immune. Yeah.
Also, when I wrote that article though, because it was on the basis, so my second book's about, it has identical twins in it and a mother going crazy. Like, there's no stretch of imagination there.
No.
And so they said, we've pitched this story to a paper, do you want to give it a go? And I am, as busy and as hard as it is having twins, I'm really reluctant to go down any of those just sort of teeing off on it being like, that double trouble sort of.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Which is quite ironic or a coincidence, because I always use irony wrong, because they named that story Double Trouble, but it was actually about twins committing crime. So it was that story. But I really wanted to put the spin on it that, this is what it was. And the contact I had from people that had twins or are yet to have twins, or like yourself, Cathy, was incredible. Like anything else, apart from the books, like I've written a few little bits and pieces to promote them. The feedback from that, and one mum who said, I'm sitting here with my 6-week-old twins reading the paper, and, people still look at me and like, oh, you're crazy. I'm glad it's not me. And she said it was really refreshing to read something positive, which was funny because I was writing about committing crime, but it was ultimately positive.
I certainly remember when my twins were babies, and I had 3, and we had our son in a fishing chair, we used to call it, like at the front of the double pram. And, people would say all those things like, oh, I'm glad it's not me. And I'd go, yeah, I'm glad it's not you either. Like, and they're like, oh, so were they IVF? And I'm like, no, they were
rude.
Oh, yeah. No,
and so rude. The questions that people ask you when you have twins are so intrusive and phenomenal. And I remember, like this one lady at the shops, and she was like, oh, so they were IVF? And I was like, no, they were SEX actually. And she was like, sorry, you don't. And I said, no, you were exactly asking me that. She's like, I didn't need to know. And I said, well, why did you ask me if they were IVF? Because what else are you asking me? Like, how were they conceived? I'm telling you how they were conceived. She was really unhappy and really taken aback. And I thought, nah, stuff you. I'm going to answer that question. And my twins are 19 now, and
you survived.
Oh well, mostly unscathed. But I still can't tell them apart. So that's a whole lot of fun. And everyone says to me, of course you can. And I'm like, of course I can't. I've been living with them for 19 years and I really, really can't. From the back.
Still look exactly the same. Like, do they still look similar? And
they have different hair lengths, but if they pull their hair up into a ponytail and don't have their glasses on, their glass frames are slightly different, but not that different. So if they don't have their glasses on and they've got their hair up, it's like, I don't know who I'm looking at. No idea.
And I used to get mistaken for my sister, who is almost 2 years older than me. So I think, and also when you're a tired, busy mum, or, even of 19-year-olds, sometimes you just don't look that hard. You're like, oh, I've got a 50-50 chance here of hitting the mark. My 6-year-old daughter can tell, like, from across the room, like through a peep of, you know, whatever. She knows which twin is which. And so if ever I'm in doubt, I just look at her and go, is that? And she's like, yeah, that's.
So useful. What a skill. Superpower.
Our son used to be like that, but he can't tell them apart now either. So
probably just given up. He's like,
his older brother. Yeah, he's the older brother, but maybe he just doesn't care anymore. So yeah.
Yeah,
But,
it's interesting dynamic. And I just love the idea that we've got 4 kids now and we're still in the quagmire, I call it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just hope, and it's going to go through phases, but that they've got a closeness there, whether it's the twins or, you know, one of the twins gang up with the older ones, you know, like they've got a little gang to, you know, family.
Are they all girls?
Girl, boy, and then the identical girls.
Yeah.
So one boy in the middle there, and I wouldn't change like any of it. And also, I didn't cry when I got that scan done because we'd been sick with COVID. I still hate talking about COVID, but we were sick with COVID, and I was 40 when I was pregnant with the twins. And I'd had a friend who'd had a chemical pregnancy, so it looked like she was, you know, by all means pregnant. And then she went for that first scan, and there was nothing there. And so going in, I'd taken my husband with me. I said, just like be prepared. I've been sick, and probably sick because on top of having COVID, I was also pregnant with twins, and so it was almost a relief as well. So perhaps in other circumstances, I would have cried. But I did send an email to my GP who I've had for years and years, and he's funny and he's lovely and he's just the GP you want, which makes it possible to get into. And I sent him a message with the ultrasound and I said, you know how you said my bloods look good for, you know, singleton pregnancy on track for this many weeks? I said, you're wrong. This is what's happening. And all I got back from a learned medical person was LMFAO.
I don't know about you, but if I've been asked once, I've been asked probably a million times, so how do you fall pregnant with twins? I'm like, I didn't try. Wasn't planned.
What a weird question. Yeah.
It's also, I think people have to be really mindful too of it's such a loaded question. Like there's still a high chance of losing a baby in pregnancy. And then there's also the chance if you haven't done IVF, you haven't done it for fun. You've done it for a variety of reasons, or you've had many losses. But just that, I just don't understand the need to ask or the need to, if it's your friends, you know, maybe. I've had people ask me, and for no apparent reason, oh, did you breastfeed them both?
Oh, yes, every single person. I'm
you know what I told them though, Cathy? Only one of them. I said I formula fed the other because I want to see if it really does make a difference. And I thought,
love it. You asked, yeah.
Well, I was out with a close girlfriend. It's just like catching up about twins, really, Laura. For you,
it's very fascinating. Fascinating. I love it.
But I was out with a close girlfriend, and her daughter is exactly 2 weeks younger than ours, than the twins. And so the girls have grown up together, and we've always kind of jokingly referred to them as the triplets. And we were at the shopping centre and she was breastfeeding. I wasn't. I've got bottles in their mouths and stuff. And someone has come up to me and gone, "You're triplets?" I'm like, yeah. She's breastfeeding and but yeah, they're mine. And we kind of looked at them and went, yeah, different dads.
Bring back maybe they're thinking there's a bring back wet nurses, like there's a for it or something.
Bizarre. I don't know, but we certainly used the different dads line a number of times. We're like, oh yeah, they're ours, but different dads.
Like, yeah, or the same dad, different mums. Like
even more controversial. Yeah,
it's, I just think you've got. I've also had a lot of people come up to me and say really lovely things, and I think especially a lot of elderly ladies or older ladies, and they just say to me, "Oh, you're doing an amazing job," and I'm like, you know, and I might not be, like I might beat them all behind closed doors, but just that, and I don't.
No, I get the impression that's not true.
No, it's not true. But you know, the fact that if you've got to walk up and say something to someone, like try and make their day. Don't be a jerk. I think is Yeah, and I've learned a lot from that too, because I'm sure I've made silly comments to people in the past, not really processing or thinking that that it was the wrong or right thing to say.
Yeah.
I think it's so because I obviously don't have twins. I have two boys, but one is nearly 14. I know. I feel like I'm not part of the gang. I feel a bit alone over here. But yeah, I've had one that's 14 and one that's 7, and there's obviously a big age gap there. And so people, that's my question I get all the time is, oh, why is the big age gap? And it's the same sort of thing. It's like, well, we had fertility issues and miscarriage, and it's the questions that I think it's when people see something a little unusual, isn't it? That just can't help themselves. And I find it's fine. I'm happy to say what has happened, but it's just that, the twins thing is like, it's pretty magical for someone that hasn't had twins to see the twins. And most of the time you'd hope they're going to say something like, you're doing a great job or something like that. That's pretty not too personal, but just nice. And I think, and that's a lesson I've learned too, from being asked lots of awkward questions is, once you're a parent, whatever your situation is, you do learn that some of the things you might have said to people in the past are probably not okay.
And I think if you could, like, if it's never malicious, and I don't think most people are. The day that article came out, Cathy, I was in the line at the supermarket getting the paper, because obviously then, I want to keep these things for myself. And the guy behind me, he looked back at me, and then he did like a double take, and he goes, "Are these all yours?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You idiot." I'm like, "My kids are right here, mate." Like, he's saying, like, and then he tried to kind of redeem it and have a conversation with me, and I'm like, I think he was trying to get, sort of that bit of Aussie, humor, but I just went like, and I looked bad that, like, I just sort of dragged him over there that day. I thought, go get coffee, mate. Like,
absolutely.
It is hilarious.
So that is wild. But just while we're talking about, the twins and busy life, I'm so fascinated by your incredibly busy schedule. And I'm wondering if you could just talk us through quickly, like, kind of not a day in the life, but like how, and I was listening to you on another podcast talking about how you write in like 15-minute snatches here or half an hour there. And I think that's really interesting that for other women, especially with kids, to think it's possible to fit these things in.
I think so. That was really born out of necessity. I had some good chunks of time writing before I had the twins. So that first book I wrote, I only had 2 kids. I had all this time on my hands. But I absolutely do not think that for people with 2 kids. Like,
I'm such a loser.
But I had a really good sleeper because we had a COVID baby. So he was born at the start of COVID. And so we were in a really good routine. So he'd nap, I'd put the TV on, I'd type. And because I figure the house always wins. And so that there'll always be laundry, there'll always be dishes. And I felt like I'd achieved something if I'd written something. So all I thought to do was, if I can get something on a page every day. So if it was 15, 20 minutes, like ideally, obviously more. But if I would usually set the timer on my phone, and I still do that now because otherwise I'll stuff around on it. Like I'll be, I'll quickly pay that bill, and then I'll just quickly scroll through other people's lives that, I have no interest really in. But, then you go down the rabbit warren of, what was it I was thinking of last night? There was somebody in a movie, and I went, I wonder what he does now. Oh, it was Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I'm like, I wonder what he ever did. And that's the rabbit hole I went down. And I thought, like, why? Why do I need to do that? He hosts Dancing with the Stars in America, in case you're wondering.
Okay,
good. But so if I set that timer on my phone, not a do not disturb or anything, and then I just do it, and I just say, I'm just doing a writing sprint to everyone, and I'll sit there and I'll try and ignore everybody. But I'm also really mindful that it means to my kids I probably look like I've got my head in a screen a lot of the time. So the older 2 do know I write books, but whether or not that sort of translates to the fact that, I'm saying to them, nah, TV off now, but now leave me alone while I sit here and type. But if I had to wait for the perfect set of circumstances to write, I wouldn't. So it's really just, and I've been lucky because for the first half of this year, my husband and I have both worked our day jobs part-time. So the other 2 days of that, so I do 3 days a week in policing, and then I do 2 days of writing.
Wow.
It just doesn't always pan out that way, though, because there's appointments and there's sick kids and all that sort of stuff. So it is not a set schedule. It's really it's dynamic and it's evolving. Dynamic makes it actually sound a lot better than it is. It's a bit of a dumpster fire. But I've got deadlines, and deadlines are really good for me. And I think one of the best things I did before I had my contract was I set out a time of when I wanted to do things by, and that made me achieve it in my own time, but gave myself that
goals.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like saying raise your children. Like this is just an ever evolving goal, there's no, you need those little if we can get to lunchtime, let's all have a chocolate or something. I don't know. So I just gave myself little goals and little, set them along the way, and then magically got published, and now somebody else gives me deadlines.
How do you juggle policing and writing? And I mean, obviously, do you draw on inspiration? Is that what kind of drew you to write about, or what made you think, oh, I've got a book in me?
Yeah, look, good question. So I always loved English and writing in high school, and then never thought of it as a job, so I stepped away from it. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I left high school, so I did uni for 3 days, and then I fell asleep in a lecture. I got up.
Relatable.
And I left, and I didn't go back. And I went and travelled overseas and did stuff, and then I joined the police force at 25, and just then was just busy, busy with life, busy doing things. And then I'm actually glad it's sort of the way it came about, probably 10 years later, and got my book club, and was inspired by Sally Hepworth, who's like, well, if you want to write a book. And I'm like, oh, okay then. And I'm kind of glad I did it sort of that much time later, because I felt like I had sort of some experience under my belt, because I had a nice, my parents were married. I lived in the same house my whole childhood. I didn't see any drugs until I was in the police force. It was, there's not a lot of good fiction in that. It wasn't exactly a tale of adversity, my upbringing. I mean, I wasn't allowed to go to parties when, go to the pub, sneak into the pub when I was 16. That was about as harsh as it got. But I did sometimes anyway.
There's not really a book in that, right?
There's not a book in that.
Short article.
Not unless, it ended really badly. So, picked it back up and got into it. But I can't say – so there's no stories in my books that are directly drawn from police, but it's the two are kind of my life and those things going into my brain are just kind of inextricably linked. So I can't say – there's nothing in there. If I wasn't a police officer, I would have written the same book, because that's not true. There's stuff in there that just has flowed because of that. But it was a bit lazy of me to pick crime as a genre, because it meant I didn't have to do as much research.
It's good. Write what you know, isn't that the thing?
I know. Yeah. But and then, for a long time I was like, well, write what you know, but what do I know? And then when I was speaking to the author Sally Hepworth and then Lisa Ireland, another Australian author, and they were asking me police questions for their books to make it. I'm like, oh, I actually have this whole skill set that I didn't realise people just didn't know. Because you just think, well, I do it every day. That's not exciting. That's not special. But apparently there's something in it. So did that, but I didn't want to be writing a police procedural, because that was too much like work. And it wanted to be, because I'm a rule follower, I would have, I would have had to make it too much based in reality. So, and that was going to be boring. If you're speaking too much paperwork and procedure and sticking to the truth, although true crime, people love it. So, I mean, there's still fun in it. But of course, when you're writing fiction and you can go off on whatever tangents you want, which I'm really good at doing, as you can see from this conversation.
Love it.
but I loved it because it was
Undiagnosed ADHD. Just saying no. Only kidding.
So yeah, it was a good escape from work as well. So as much as work influenced it, it was also my way to disconnect and do something for myself, because I wasn't otherwise doing anything solely for me. It was work and then home and then back again.
Yeah. And did you start by writing the full book or doing a chapter or coming up with the idea? What was the process just in sort of getting that over the line?
So right at the start, I just workshopped a whole heap of ideas. So I just kept writing down, I think I said, write down 20 ideas and then see which one you like the idea of. And then I started probably 3 or 4 books and we're like, oh, no, nothing really in that. And then I wrote a whole book, which has never been published. So that one was like my apprenticeship, I like to think of as, which was a police procedural. So it was a detective working in the Melbourne suburbs, and it was very much based in, how things would be done and very run of the mill. But that one I learnt a lot, and I learnt that I could do it, and then benched that, and I started trying to map out what it is. Because I read a lot. I love reading. I've always loved reading. And I think to be a writer, you absolutely have to. I went, what is it that I like about books? Like, what are the ones that stick with me? And it was characters. I wanted to walk away with a character still with me and not just finish it and go, oh, good twist. Like to come back to a character to reread a book. So I went and kind of delved into what characters I liked and who I could create that people might want to imagine being part of their lives. And I'm really proud of the character in the first book, because the feedback I've got about Lenny Marks has been, just people that say, I don't think they realise how big a deal it is to me, oh, Lenny will live rent-free in my head for, the foreseeable future. And I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted. And one of the librarians here in Melbourne, who's just amazing and very supportive, and she said, I saw a Friends mug, like Friends the TV show, because it's quite a big theme in the first book, because Lenny Marks is a bit obsessed with Friends the show. She said, I saw a Friends mug and I wanted to buy it for Lenny, and then I realised she's not a real person. Wow. Because I just wanted something that sunk in your head and stuck with people. So it came down to, there's a character and that's who I want to write about. Now, what has happened to her? And then unfortunately, because it's fiction and you need a character arc and you need a plot, you need to just throw some really terrible things at your characters. But then ultimately I wanted it to be hopeful or uplifting without being corny. I didn't want you to walk away from my books, and this might change as my writing evolves and my plots evolve, but I didn't want you to walk away feeling worse about the world than you got into it. And I'll give you an example, because if Stephen King hears this and listens to your podcast, I'm happy to feel
Let's hope so.
Yeah, I'm happy to feel these emails or calls if he's upset. But then he writes horror, so like that's meant to be. But I read his book Holly, and it's a detective book, but then it's got this cannibal theme and stuff in it. And I'm already a vegetarian, or I would have been after that book. And I walked away just kind of like, kind of good read, but and that's amazing, because a book that makes you feel anything is, doing its job. But I wanted somebody to walk away and be just kind of like, shut the book and be like, nice, I liked that. I'm going to, that's a book I can give to, my mum, my dad, my friends. So that's, that's kind of how it all came together. And then I'm not good at planning my writing. So that is not an efficient process for me. I have to write and then write the book again and then write the book again. Like over the top of it. Like, so I'm not just starting a blank document to get to know my characters and then also really knuckle down what I want the plot to be. And I presume this will be an evolving thing as well. Hopefully I'll get to keep writing books, and I'm writing the third at the moment. And I'll think about, I'll be like 50% through and I'll go, you know what, it'd be really good if I had have woven in at the start that this character does this, and then that, whatever happens. And sometimes I'll go through to the end and then go back to the start. But I know that means, you're not done yet. Like, there's a whole other draft of this to do. So it's a time-consuming process, and at the moment the time is really hard to come by. So it has been It's been more difficult, this book, to write, because I'm writing it with 2-year-old twins. Newborn twins was easier.
I can
Right.
Oh,
imagine.
yeah, give me newborn
Toddlers.
twins any day over toddlers. Ugh.
Yeah. Although don't give me back newborns, because I don't love a lot of things to do with newborns. But the time you've got on your hands is better. And you can also watch whatever TV show you want while they sleep on you or while they
That's
feed.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you bottle feed one and
Yeah, when I'm breastfeeding one and bottle feeding the other.
But that's a social experiment. Yeah.
I'll let you know how that goes.
it's really funny because back to the twin thing. My twins are so identical that they can unlock each other's phones. So the biometric face scanners in the
And that's
phones and things,
fascinating.
they reckon that they shouldn't be able to do that, but that's how identical my twins are. They can do it. And it's just, so I am just always fascinated by, books like Joy Moody, where you were thinking about, identical twins and what can the twist be, and that's, that's not telling anybody anything about that book, because that's not the twist in the book at all. But I just love how your thought process went to straight from, oh, I'm pregnant with twins, to, oh, I can write a crime fiction book about twins getting away with murder.
Well, and because I find, so it's like the police brain and the writer's brain, then I'm like, that, like, DNA of identical twins is identical. And this blows my mind. I did have somebody email me after that article came out, and she said, I'm just letting you know, I have this article that says that it's not actually identical DNA. I'm like, okay, don't worry about it. Like, don't ruin my fun. Apparently, there's some subtle differences in some, but like the general thing is it's different. Your fingerprints are different because they're formed in the womb, but the DNA is the same. And I just found that so fascinating, and that was meant to be such a bigger part of the book. And I won't give any spoilers away, but it was meant to be so much more focused on, how do you prove? So if one of yours are boys, aren't they, Cathy?
No, girls.
Girls, sorry.
Yeah,
so if one of the girls murder you, and all you've got is DNA to go on, you can't charge both those twins.
No.
You have to be able to prove who was there, and unless the other one has a really good alibi, and there's been cases of it where people, which was the basis of that article, where people have gone to jail, and one of them I was reading, I'm like, this is so sad. Like, his brother's gone to jail for him, and then finally he's sort of cleaned up his act a bit and said, oh, by the way, that was me that did that gang shooting, and let his brother out. But it's kind of, if you're the good twin, you've kind of got a target. You're walking around with a target on your back. You'd want a pretty good alibi most of your time, and especially if then they can unlock each other's phones, which is a dimension I think of, because then, phone tracking has been so
access.
So many cases, and so then you've got the phone being accessed and used, and one twin's going, oh no, I was asleep, It's so interesting.
Which means they can get through the biometric scanning at the airport as well. Like, when we took
passports,
when we've taken them overseas, we've been told to take, so they were tiny, well, not tiny, they were 18 months old or thereabouts, when we went to Fiji, and we were actually told by a friend of mine through the Model Birth Association who worked for Customs. She said, make sure you take your copies of your, notarized copies of birth certificates, because they have they knew of cases where passports are cancelled, like one of the passports, because the system freaks out that there's dates and the same dates and the same parents, and sometimes the system just freaks out, and we're like,
something's shifted.
So you get out of the country. It's like the getting out's fine. It's the getting back in. And my mum just kind of, because we all went to Fiji with my brother and my mum and dad and everything. And my mum was just like, oh, well, if you can't bring them both back through, you just leave the one you can't, and they have to sort it out, like with the customs people, and you just walk off and they're going to sort it out real bloody quick with a crying kid, you know. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I want to do that, Mum. Like, and, you know, like we're on a plane flying to Fiji, and the girls were dressed tiny bit differently. They both had the same green skirt thing on, but a tiny different shade of T-shirt, but they were only 18 months old, and it was one of the really big planes. And we were walking around and around in circles, and they were just like walking past, but on the opposite aisles. And there was this one point where my dad and my husband crossed each other, and this guy that was sitting there was like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad there's two of them." And they were like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I just thought there was this really quick kid."
Oh,
So it's been like, there's been lots of funny moments like that, you know.
and can we just go back to the fact you got on a plane with, did you say 18 months old?
Yeah, and our son was like, well, he was 4.5. Or
And international. That's like,
yeah.
that's for you, because sometimes I can't even get down the road to Frankston.
My parents were there, and my brother and his wife and his two kids were on the plane as well. So, like, I can't say that I did it all by myself, but yes, it was. But you just do these things, right? Like, people say, "How do you cope?" And it's like, well, what's my alternative? Like, I have to get up each day. I put one foot in front of the other, and I try and work out which baby needs to be fed more urgently. You know, like you just do it. I don't know.
Tired somewhere, it might as well be somewhere tropical.
Yeah,
that's true.
Do you think at any point you've switched them and never switched them back?
Oh gosh, we've been asked this question so many times, and look, I can't honestly say with hand on heart, no, that we definitely haven't. 100%, I don't know.
No, that's fair enough.
We could have easily, but now they know, like Charlotte knows she's Charlotte and Lily knows she's Lily.
Now they know. It's a very small window of time. This could probably happen.
But we could have very possibly done it when they were babies. But we had bracelets, bracelets on their wrists, and for a long time, probably not that long, probably only 6 weeks, but it felt like it was a long time. They were on the same. We had them just on the same arm, and my mum said to me, "You know, you're never going to be able to tell them apart in photos." I was like, "Oh yeah,
yes."
I was like, I remember that that Charlotte always wore pink and Lily always wore purple. And she's like, no, you won't. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And she's like, so why don't you put Lily's bracelet on the left? So that was what we did. So it was like Lily left. And throughout school and things like that, the girls went to a school where it was like a no jewelry policy in primary school. And the principal said, so no jewelry. And we're like, yep, no worries. Like, and he's like, so that means they can't wear their bracelets. And I'm like, that's fine, but it's on you to work out who's who.
Yep.
And they are really close, and they will not be going in separate classes.
And they're both in uniform.
Yep.
They're
all of that. And he was like, nah, we've got this. And I was like, no worries, Mr. Heffernan, no worries. And he was like, yep, no, we're really good. We can tell kids apart. I was like, tops. Sent them off to school. And you pick your kinder kid up first, and then I'm waiting in the playground for our oldest son to come out of his class. And Mr. Heffernan walks up to me in the playground and he says, Kath? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, so can you do me a favour? I was like, yeah, sure. Can you put the bracelets on the girls? No worries, Mr. Heffernan. One day it lasted. One day. I was like, sure, I'll do whatever you need. So, yeah, it's quite funny. But
it is funny.
Yeah.
I got the bracelets at this really is a twin. We're turning into a twins conversation, but I forgot.
I love it. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, we've got coloured ones, and so everybody in our family has a colour, and that's the colour of their towels, including my husband and I.
Yeah.
And the kids have a game with it. Like if they see a car that passes in pink, that's a point to my daughter. There's no point actually gathering. Like we don't ever count. She's like, oh yay, point for me. So the twins have orange and yellow, so we've got orange and yellow bracelets for them, and I forgot them one day. And in the car, because they're baby 3 and 4, in the car before I dropped them inside, and they're pretty good at telling them apart anyway, I got my pen and I wrote an initial on each one of them. I'm like, there you go, sorted. Who needs a bracelet? You've got it written on your arm.
Tattoo. That's the next step.
Well, that's frowned upon.
Yeah, when they're little, like it's not, like everyone says, get them tattooed. And I'm like, but where am I going to get them tattooed that you can see that we can tell them apart? And they're like, oh, yeah, true. So, yeah, it's really frowned on when they're little. When they're older, and choose it themselves, that's okay.
But you also want it to be somewhere prominent, like a little face tattoo,
Oh, yeah, a little tear.
Yeah, we should. I couldn't tell it.
Yeah. Not great anyway. But.
No.
Our podcast is about changes. So are there any changes, still big and small, left that you, or big or small or medium, that you still want to make in your life?
Always. The biggest one for me at the moment is fitting exercise into my days, because I don't, other than just taking the kids out for a walk, which is great, I just feel like I've gotten myself a bit lost in there with just looking after myself a little bit better and feeling a bit healthier. And I think post 40, I feel like weight doesn't just, it's never fallen off me, but I feel like there's bits of me that have never quite bounced back quite the same way after the twin pregnancy. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm so I think if I'd grown up with social media, I would have been in a lot of trouble. I feel like I've got a fairly positive body image, and I'm really mindful of what I say around my kids, and because my body grew for human beings, it's and even it's my body, it gets me round, it's the one I've got. So I'm very mindful of not saying things, but I want to be able to run around with the kids, and I also want to be able to put my headphones on, listen to some music, and go for a jog or something with no one, not feel like to be a family walk every time, because that slows you down.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. It's not, Laura and I were talking the other day that we need to, as adults, kids play all the time, but adults, we don't program rest and we don't program play, and we really need to put those into our days so that to look after ourselves and rejuvenate ourselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's funny that you say that, because I was thinking about that with the kids, because I went, you guys are just active all day. You don't need to, exercise per se, because your days are full of, your schoolyard and busy and activities and stuff like that. And I know why we don't do it as adults. We've got shit to do. And, by the time you get home from work, especially this time of year, and it's dark and it's cold and it's all the things.
Yeah.
But definitely I would like to fit something into my weeks that make me feel like I've done some sort of movement.
That's a good achievable goal. I reckon you can do it.
Yeah. And help, just to stay healthy forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. It's not about visuals anymore. It's about just being healthy and strong. And,
exactly right. Yeah, being able to do things. And I don't want to sneeze and blow my back out or something.
Oh my God. Yes, I've been there.
That's
Oh my God.
I bent over and did the other day. So I can.
It's never the cool thing that you do.
No, never.
It's always
skiing or something.
It's going to be something, and it'll also be something that you probably didn't even need to do, and so you're like, I just really regret that completely.
Yeah. Totes. I did that to my neck the other day. I looked up to shut my car boot, did my neck. Just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Fell over.
What?
Crossing the road. Remember earlier in the year, I was walking across the road, walking upright, next thing facing the ground.
Wow. Just true. Just
all over.
Goodness.
Oh. You might need to get yourself
just old.
Oh, no, you're not. It's just that, getting older.
And you know
you're
what?
busy.
That's it. When we're busy and we're not paying attention, and when down we go. And then it's always just more embarrassing usually than it is.
Yeah.
Hurt.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Kerryn, very final last question. We've enjoyed this chat so much, but
It's been so much fun. Thank you.
Finally, because our podcast is called Change, which is in part reference to the midlife experience of all women, perimenopause, menopause, whatever we want to refer to it as. What's your feeling? You're probably not quite there yet, but what is your feeling towards the change that's sort of forthcoming for you?
So it's a funny one. In my family, Mum never spoke about it, and this may be a generational thing, but it was sort of, I don't know whether she sort of wasn't the done thing to talk about. So it's all a bit of a mystery to me as to whether or not she did it hard or not. I've got a good supportive group of friends and people, so I'm hoping we'll just lean on each other and hopefully it'll be all right. I feel in a really good place in my 40s, much more confident in myself, and like I've mostly got my shit together and achieved some things that I wanted to achieve. So I'm all for it. Just onto the next chapter, and hopefully it's smooth sailing. I don't know. It's funny though, and this is probably too much information. I already take Remifemin for hot flushes because I think it was a hormonal thing after the babies. It's just I would sit there at night and I was just drenched in sweat and it was awful, and these really smoothed me out. So I'm hoping that it's, maybe that's the worst of it.
Yeah. Who knows, eh?
Who knows? I mean, yes. And I do think it is a little bit of a generational thing. Like, I don't think my mum certainly didn't really talk about it, and certainly sort of made very little conversation around it, and sort of said, oh, no, it didn't really impact me. But it was like, are you sure?
Yeah, it's true.
But see,
a bit mad, Mum.
My mum told me that childbirth isn't painful, it's just hard work.
Well, yeah, my mum said that it was no worse than period pain. I was like,
God.
Yeah. Well, we both had endo, but it was a little bit more than period pain, Mum. But
so they're just liars. That's what waking me up is. I also think my mum really wanted grandchildren. So
she's trying to sell it to you.
My mum really wanted grandchildren, but it was like, I think that it was just not talked about, and I think we are, trailblazing in that way, like talking about it and going, you know what, we're hot and we're angry and you're not going to shut us up. And so hopefully that makes things better for our children's generation.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Exactly. And obviously as an author, I'm all for the words. So I say just, talk about it. That'll be the theme of my next book, somebody angry and perimenopause.
Yeah. Kills some people. Yeah.
Oh gosh, what a chat. That was just so much fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. We vibed well. When you have guests and you're like, this is great. We should just set up a business.
We don't really need questions. We can just riff off each other. It was just a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. The twin connection was obviously great for you, and you being so much further ahead than her in the twin journey was so fascinating for someone who obviously has never had twins.
Really?
And, I know. Still time. There's not time. But yeah, it was really a really, really good chat. Very interesting woman.
And I just loved because every writer who writes a book has a different process, and her process is different to other writers, where she said she basically writes the book and then rewrites the book and then rewrites the book. It was just like, wow.
And writes them in increments of 15 minutes here, there and everywhere around her 4 kids and job. Incredible.
I know.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it, really, that someone can achieve so much. And most of us are just trying to get by. I mean, really.
Yeah, I know. And look, there is absolutely a tendency to look at somebody incredible like Kerryn with 2 great books and 4 kids and a job, not just a small job, a demanding job, right? Even though as she said, it's not a shift working role at the moment, but it's still an important job, right?
Yeah.
And, House, as she said, chose a good husband, good partner in life.
Essential in a situation.
Absolutely essential. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but definitely for me, there's a tendency to look at people like that and go, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? But I actually saw something yesterday from Sophie Scott, and it was just a really good, timely reminder that we're all in the place where we're meant to be in our life. Like everybody's at the right place at the right time. I know it sometimes doesn't feel like that, and I certainly kind of look at someone like Kerryn and think, oh my God, what have I been doing with my time? I didn't even have a job when the kids were little, so I had absolutely no excuse for not writing a book. But I
think that statement in and of itself is just wrong, isn't it? Like when you think about it, of course, not everyone can write a book when they've got little kids. It's just not. No, it's not everybody's thing, or at that stage of life, it's not everybody's thing. You might write a book, but that was not your time.
No, and it is important to remember that our time comes to us when it's right, and it's a little bit like our podcast here. We wanted to do it for so long, and the timing just wasn't right. But the timing's right now, and
that's right.
We've got some fabulous guests, and we've been speaking to incredible women, and
Kerryn was totally up there. She is, and when she said at the end about needing some time for exercise, I thought, my God, if she'd have suddenly said, I was training for a triathlon, I would have been like, no, you need to leave now. I can't cope. I'm sorry, my brain is not computing. So I'm glad she's there's an area where she's not, smashing it out of the park.
Yeah. But we
need humans.
That's right.
Yeah.
But of course we do wish her all success with her third book.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Can't wait to read that. So
I haven't read Lenny Marks as yet, so I've got to get my head into that. Sounds amazing, and she was such a great chat.
Thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at _change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on The Change.